was God. Family and friends, hello. Welcome to this place, Edgewood United Church of Christ, as we remember and honor the life of Elizabeth. You come from different places and knew Beth in different ways. Mother, sister, grandmother, coworker, voting advocate, church member, just to name a few. Similarly, you come from different places and have different views on spirituality and religion. For some of you, a church is a safe place. For others, it might be unfamiliar or even bring back bad memories. As we say at the beginning of worship here each week, no matter who you are or where you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. Today, I want you to hear that, and hear that no matter who you are or what you're feeling right now, you're welcome here. The scripture that I read just a moment ago reminds us Christians that whoever loves is a child of God, is a member of our family. It's love that brings us all here today. So regardless of any other affiliations you have, if you're here in love, you're part of our loving family, and you are welcome here. I'm Greg Briggs, the pastor here, and I invite you to be and feel whatever you need. Let the worries of your daily life be set aside for now. That includes turning off the ringer on your cell phones. As your emotions come, let the tears fall. Let the laughter and flashes of bittersweet memories come. We're here to support one another. There's Kleenex in the pews. If you need something to squeeze and you don't think the person next to you would like that, you can squeeze our hymnals. In all of this, as we prepare to share in our different memories of Beth and the love that we have for her, let us also be in touch with the universal love and compassion by whatever names we know it. Let us also remember those that are not with us here physically, but are here with us in spirit. Again, nothing separates us from God's love. So let's us all take a deep breath in and let it out slowly as we remember the life of Beth. So I invite you to join in our invitation to worship. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God. As you are willing and able, I invite you to rise and sing in our opening hymn, How Great Thou Art, which is the insert in the bulletin. Let us join together in our responsive prayer printed in the bulletin. You, Lord, are our shepherd. You have us rest in green pastures. You restore our soul. Yea, though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil, for you are with us. Your rod and your staff, they comfort us. You prepare a table before us in the presence of our foes. You anoint us with your hospitality and pour out blessing after blessing. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives. And we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. I now want to invite Beth's daughter, Sarah, to come up and read the poem, Wild Peace.
You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
And now to begin our words of remembrance, I want to invite Lisa.
Need this? So I'm not going to speak long, primarily because I think I wrote the longest obituary in the State Journal's history. So I don't have a lot more to say. But one thing I do need to say is that Mom, in her heart, was always a journalist. That's what she wanted to be when she grew up initially. Nothing mattered more to her than facts and sources of those facts. So when I included in the obituary a comment about how Mom had arrived in Chicago to study journalism, and what made it extra exciting was that there was the Democratic Convention going on and JFK was there. That was based on me being with her in 2020 and 2024, and we watched both conventions, both parties, because she was passionate about conventions. She remembers watching the very first convention that was televised with her dad. I don't know how old she was, but she was pretty little, and I can't imagine being interested in that at that age, but that was Mom. So that was what I wrote the obituary on, and my Uncle Dick is a phenomenal genealogist, historian, and researcher. He's amazing. And he dug into the newspapers, and he found an article that my mom wrote and published in the Chico Enterprise Record, for Chico people here, that she wrote when she came back from that event. And it said, it was the Republican convention and Richard Nixon, and wasn't it exciting, and all of that stuff. So the excitement part she remembered right. We didn't remember the other part right. So in the point of truth, because that's what she wants always, I'm going to be updating you guys here, and I am going back to the Gore's Line obituary page, and we're going to update it there too. So just so you know, those are facts, and she would be really mad at me if I didn't do that. And you know that look. The other thing I wanted to say about Mom was from the perspective of a daughter. One thing Sarah and I knew from the earliest days were Mom and Dad were a team. They were a team in raising kids. You couldn't get in bigger trouble if you actually tried to pit one against the other. Trust me, I did that once. They were a team in their careers. Dad was always supportive. I don't know if you guys knew this, but I was like 3 months old and Mom was down in the pit getting full load of classes to keep going with her degree. And let's see here. And they were also team in fighting in travel and team in fighting their respective health challenges as they got older. Another part that you may or may not know, because I don't know how widely she shared this, but she nearly died when she had me. Our age factor was a problem at that point in time, and science, being what science is, it evolved and figured out a way to make that not a problem when my sister was born. So, yay science. Because I have a great sister, just so you know. But it was also a key event for them as a young couple and new parents because it cemented them again in that teamwork thing. And so they had to be because I love my family, but they were like, 2,000 miles away. And so they built a family at Cherry Lane Apartments. You remember those? Michigan State people? I thought it was the best place to be raised as a kid. I didn't care about the cockroaches. But they built an extended family where they started their lives together at Edgewood, and I see some of them here, Carol and Lynn. And it was an ever-evolving family, and they basically built that family as members of Edgewood, and then also as members of Michigan State, and then West Lawn people. I'm looking for Doug, yay. And the newest members of the West Lawn family, the Mullers sitting behind Doug there. So we have this, just constantly evolving extended family. So when Dad passed in 2011, Mom navigated her life beautifully, even without her life partner. It was still pretty hard, but she did that. And she would travel to meet friends for lunch. I ran across lots of notes about setting up lunches with people. And spring break adventures with Charlie and Sarah. For me, early retirement in 2019 allowed me the time to support Mom in her fight to keep her circle as wide as possible and her adventures as broad as possible as the rheumatoid arthritis continued to try and take that away. My sister had developed, and I didn't realize this at the time, this wonderful tradition years ago, calling Mom on her walks to and from school. And nothing ever helped my mother's energy level than getting phone calls about what was the latest going on in Portland. So Sarah and I were a team supporting Mom. We took it in different ways, but we had the same goal, to keep her in her house as long as possible. And we were successful in that. Just 3 weeks was the only amount of time. Well, no, I take that back. It's a little longer than that, 5 months, but in the scale of things. But over those years, she had developed a wonderful group of helpers. There was Lynette, who took care of the house. I don't think anybody ever cleaned as well as she did. And to my mom's standards, I could never do it. And Keith and Phil took care of the yard. And Sharon, who helped her with her body and the physical therapy. In fact, I want to just close with this remembrance of a day that Sharon and I shared. And I'm the engineer, so I'm always trying to find the thing you fix things with. And one of the things that Sharon proposed was an arm walker. So you basically rest your arms like this as opposed to using your wrists. And we went to Sparrow Medical Supply, and Mom got on that walker, and I think she flew around that thing. I don't think I had ever seen her walk that fast in a long, long time. So I'm not an infomercial, but just those were the best things since sliced bread. So in closing, I just wanted to say I have one last request for you guys. Mom had a gift of names and faces, and she could always remember who did what and where. She did not give me that gift. So please, when we go to the social hall, can you write on your name tags, like where we would know you from, because that will really help. So with that said, and I'm not going to fall off of this thing. Got it. Thank you.
I think that may be the first time I've heard a retraction during a eulogy before. I've been asked by the family to read a note from Dick Pemberton, Beth's brother, because he's not able to be here. So for those of you that know him, picture him saying these words. My big sister, Elizabeth Clare Pemberton. The name our parents, Richard and Elizabeth Pemberton, gave their firstborn child and only daughter. That was on March 30th, 1943, in Chico, California, during World War II and the beginning of their new life together. Our parents were in their 40s when they married and started our family. Mom was a registered nurse working in Chicago. Then she traveled west, being a private nurse for a while. Dad was a jack of all trades, growing up in the wild west of Redding, California. The family story told many times that was Dad selling cars in 1937, and while Mom was working at Enloe Hospital in Chico, he sold her a new car. She took the train to Detroit and drove her new Plymouth Coupe back to Chico. Married in 1942, they lived in our little house when Beth was born, had me 3 years later, then moved the house along with us. I look back at the retelling of those times by our parents as their opportunity to start a new life for all of us. The land where they moved the house was mostly bare, so they planted fruit trees, blackberry bushes, grass, and a hedge that surrounded a patio area with a brick barbecue Dad built. He made outdoor play equipment in his shop for Beth and me to play on, and Mom canned the peaches and apricots from the trees. My memories are idyllic of those times. Beth is my big sister. 3 years don't seem like a lot when one is 78 years old, but when I was 7 and she was 10, it was a big gap. We would fight, some like most siblings, but it didn't get out of hand. Well, except for the time I threw my shoe at her or when she stabbed me in the arm with a pencil. Forgotten and forgiven. I looked up to her. She was smart and positive. When our parents turned our garage into a neighborhood store, eventually expanding it into a variety and grocery store, our home life and probably relationship changed. It was expected of us to work in the store, but our parents were novices at running a small business, along with raising children at the same time. It became challenging in our teen years, especially when our dad's heart condition and emphysema were enhanced by his alcoholism. I was proud of Beth when she accepted to attend a 5-week summer journalism course for high school students at Northwestern University. This was in the summer of 1960, a long way from Chico. Besides the scholarship she received from Northwestern, the Quota Club of Chico and other philanthropic organizations contributed to her trip, allowing her to see life in a different perspective. The experiences she had at Northwestern, the journalism workshops at Chico State, and her editor-in-chief assignment of the Chico Senior High newspaper were all foundations for her future. Beth became good friends with Ginger Moore and eventually started dating Ginger's brother Richard when he was visiting his parents in Chico from Michigan. Romance bloomed and they were married in Chico on December 23rd, 1963. Our father passed away 2 days later, Christmas Day. Trying times for our family. Beth and Richard left for East Lansing, Michigan after the funeral. We kept in touch through phone calls, mostly during holidays. When I was working on a fire lookout in 1965, they drove up the rocky road to visit me, borrowing Paul and Lucille Moore's VW Bug, with Lisa bouncing in the back. I visited them during Thanksgiving in '65 on Cherry Lane while Lisa was a toddler, before I went into the Army the following January, 1966. Over the years, though, through our long phone calls and occasional visits in Michigan, California, and Oregon, Beth and I always kept in touch. On one Oregon trip with my wife, Connie, our son, Phil, and his future wife, Denise, we attended Sarah and Scott's wedding. When our mother passed away in 1985, Beth came to Livermore, and we made funeral arrangements. We traveled back to Chico to intern our mom next to our dad at the Chico Cemetery. We both grew our own families, made our own life choices, and had different work-life experiences. But when we did chat, it was hard to stop talking and sharing what was going on in our lives. In my mind, I am still thinking that I'll get a message or a phone call from her. Right before Beth passed, we had agreed on a time to talk in a day or so. Love you, Beth, my big sister. I miss you. We all miss you. Thank you to Lisa and Sarah for organizing a gathering for extended family and friends who have their own memories and stories in remembrance of Beth's journey through their collective lives and her own. May your pain be no more. Love always, Beth, your little brother, Richard Bond Pemberton, or formerly known as Dickie, but currently answering to Dick. I would now like to invite the former Ginger Moore and now Ginger Breels to come up and share some words.
Dickie and I have a lot of overlap in our story, and I want to tell you that my friend Steve told me 5 minutes, but this is a 66-year-old friendship, and I'm going to try to keep it to 10. I'm going to try to keep it to 10. Okay, so there are people that when they die, you can't imagine the world without them, and that's how I feel about Beth. She was my oldest friend. So here is how I first met Beth. In September of 1959, my family moved because of my dad's job from a very urban New York City bedroom community, Stamford, Connecticut, to what at that time was a very rural Chico, California. Beth and I were 16, but I didn't know her yet. I was miserable most of that year. I didn't wear the right shoes. I didn't know that you should wear a wool sweater to the first football game, even if it was 92 degrees. Most especially, I didn't know where to sit in the cafeteria lunchroom. And then halfway through the year, I found the lunch table for the nerds. There was Carol, Donna, Leona, and Beth, and a lot of others, and no one cared what I was wearing. And not only that, they were curious about back east, and they asked me lots of questions. So then I found that Beth just lived down the street from me. My mother sent me on an errand to buy ketchup, and I went into the little corner store, and there was Beth to wait on me. And her parents, as Dick said, her parents owned and ran a small store. There was everything in that store. There was milk and eggs and coffee, canned goods, soft drinks, cereal, but also makeup and newspapers and kitchen utensils. And the store was connected to the house. So you could be inside doing household things, and then you could hear the bell. I can still conjure up the sound of that bell. You'd hear the bell, and then you'd scoot down this little connecting passage and be there for the customer. So that was, and that was their life. That was their life. Just before our wedding, my wedding, my boyfriend and I went to the store, because Mrs. Pemberton had asked us to come. And she gave me a chef's knife and a bread knife. And I still have those knives, battered as they are, because they remind me so much of our young selves, Beth and me and Mrs. Pemberton and Dickie and Spot the dog. So the whole family worked in the store. As Dick said, I would go there on a Saturday morning so Beth and I could talk, and Beth and I could always talk. And she would let me wait on customers. And I didn't know how to give change. She had to teach me how to give change. I was 16, 17 years old, but she'd been giving change since she was in 3rd grade. So, and then in the evenings that first summer, she and I would go to the 5 Mile Dam, and we would swim, but we would mostly tread water so we could talk. And we talked, and we talked. And then another scene I remember, this is unbelievable. Kids could do anything in those days. They were building a freeway through the middle of Chico, and during the day, these great big trucks would pile up these huge piles of dirt, And in the evening, Beth and I would go up there to the top of these piles of dirt and talk. I think Jim, my brother, went with me a few times. Do you remember that? And we would be up on these big piles and just talking and talking and talking. So, and it was that first summer I knew Beth that she won that scholarship to go to Chicago for Northwestern University. And that was a really big deal, as Dick said. She was a star at Chico High, but she was an unpretentious one, and one who would sit with me at the nerds' lunch table. So the second summer that I knew Beth, after we graduated from high school, my brother came home from the University of Michigan. He rarely came home in the summertime, and I don't know why he came home that summer. But one evening, as we often did, Beth and I made plans to go to A&W Root Beer and sit in the car. You know, they brought it out on a tray, sit in the car and talk and talk and talk. Well, Richard invited himself along. And you remember how the bench seats were in those days. So Richard was at the driver, Beth was in the middle, and I was at the window. Amazingly, none of us could remember which one it was. Was it Beth? Was it Richard? Who conked the other one hard over the head. And we don't remember who it was, but that was the beginning. And that was the very last night, that whole summer, that Beth and I spent any time talking. I didn't see her until the summer was over and Richard went back to the University of Michigan. So, but at Chico State that fall, after Richard left, Beth and I were buddies again. And I want to say I was a pretty undirected kid. I was a college student, but I had no idea where I was headed. I was so lucky to have Beth to just follow along. And I wish now that I had told her, and I don't think I ever told her, that she saved my life as a student because I just did whatever she did. And at night we would study. We had a lot of classes together. We studied in her bedroom at a gray Formica table almost every night. And her mother would go out in the store and get us root beer and bring it in and see how we were doing. In between her running down that little connecting bit for customers. One dark night, this is the memorable, one dark night, we had spent the entire night studying for a European history final. And we studied really hard all night long. But when we were done, we rode our bikes into Bidwell Park, dark night. And Bidwell Park is a huge, like 4,000 acre, I think, wild park. This dark night, we rode our bikes down to the creek. Well, we first had to go through some woods to get into the creek, and we went wading in the creek. That was our reward for all the studying. And we both got A's on that exam, and I would not have done so well without Beth to follow. So for a time, this is one more story. Can I tell one more story? So for a time, Beth thought that she would transfer to University of Oregon, where I was at the time, and where I had transferred to. But she needed to work for a while and to get her residency, Oregon residency. So I lived in a dorm on campus, and she lived in a room on the third floor of an old house with a window that looked over the sidewalk. So, of course, there was no texting in those days, but neither one of us had access to phones. So I had to know if she was home on that third floor before I went up the steps. So we had this plan. She had a big cardboard poster that she wrote these French words, EC, which meant here. So I would see that, and I would know, oh, she's there, so I'm going to go up those steps. It never occurred to us that probably in that university town, a lot of people knew what EC meant and wondered just who was EC. So I'm almost finished. Beth and Richard were married in December of that year, 1963. And as we were coming out of the church, Beth caught up to me, and she whispered in my ear, and she said, "We will never lose contact as friends because now we are sisters." And so the very next day they left, but we stayed close. Beth was here having babies, going to school, going to work, and I was in St. Louis or Pittsburgh having babies. But we did stay close. It was hard to do a lot of phone calls because they were very expensive at that time, if you remember, the long-distance phone calls. But we talked and talked in our letters. And our kids grew up together because we got together for Thanksgivings and Christmas. And, well, not Christmas, Thanksgivings and summer times. And there were always highs and lows in life and things that we had to talk about, things that we had to sift through details. And she always listened, and I always listened, and we talked and talked. And last of all, I want to say that I will always be grateful to Beth for being just exactly the right wife for my much more nerdy brother, Richard. Right? She was exactly the right wife for him. And as Dick said, she supported and respected, or you said, Lisa, she supported and respected him in everything, jobs, travels, his hobbies. I will miss her so much for the rest of my life. My daughter, Kelly, told me on that day when Beth died, that very day, she said that she heard someone say that when a person dies, we should applaud for a life well lived and well loved. And I just want to say I applaud you, my sister and my friend, Beth. And I haven't stopped talking to you. I'm still talking. That's it.
I like to think that applause was both for Ginger and for Beth. Now I'd like to invite up Beth's friend, Judy Karanajeff.
This is more difficult than a league speech. Beth welcomed Joanne Hubbard and I at a local league women voters meeting shortly after we both moved here in 1977. Beth's knowledge and love for the mission of the league were apparent. She coached many of us on the complexity of the league's lingo and procedures. She would also give you a look of approval when she agreed with you, or take time to explain her point of view when she didn't. And she always had a good book to recommend. As Lisa said, it was fitting that she passed on February 14th, the day the league was founded in 1920. Her passion for educating others and ensuring access to elections started at an early age, as we have heard in Chico. Her parents' house would turn into a precinct while in her living room and dining room where people would vote, besides having the store. She served as a volunteer on the local and state league boards here in Michigan in different positions for many years. One of her greatest accomplishments was writing and updating the league publication, their state we're in. This useful booklet educated many people about our state and pulled together her work in the league and in MSU Extension. On a personal note, Beth and I probably met for breakfast, lunch, or a visit, or talked on the phone almost every week for over 40 years. We shared our lives. Some of my favorite memories, including attending annual meetings for the local league, one coming up, and state and national conventions together, enjoying one of her special salads or desserts she would bring to our family dinner, taking two of our grandchildren, Charlie and Katie, to MSU's Grandparents University, and sharing breakfast with Lisa and Bob the day after our daughter Stacy's wedding. I am sure everyone here has a favorite memory, and hopefully we can carry those in our hearts and share them with Lisa and Sarah and Scott and Charlie and her family, and model the ways Beth enriched our lives. Her friendship and ability to mentor others will be a part of that legacy. To Lisa and Sarah, we give you lots of hugs for the love and support you provided your mom. You have been amazing, and now we are all here for you. All of us were lucky to have such a good friend. An anonymous quote says, "Good friends are like stars. You don't always see them, but you know they're always there." Thank you, Beth, for being a star in all of our lives. Thank you.
And last but not least, I want to invite up Sandy Stuckman.
I want you to know they have a step here for me. If I weren't on this step, you wouldn't be able to see me. You know what I look like. Beth and I met in the late 1970s when she found her professional home with MSU Extension, the part of the university dedicated to public outreach and education. She built positive and productive relationships with Extension's campus and county networks. A county extension director with whom she worked said, and I quote, "Beth was a shining star in the MSU family. I appreciate the ways she supported our off-campus and county networks with her public policy, educational materials, and professional development options." Beth's initiatives were public policy education, training for county commissioners, because many of them didn't really know the job they'd gotten into. And so Extension provided valuable in-service education so they could represent the people who elected them. She trained new legislators with a team and individuals who wanted to become legislators, because many of the legislators, when new, really needed that help and support. An event 4-H capital experience for Michigan young people throughout the state to enable them to learn about public policy, state government, communicating with legislators, how you talk to legislators at the breakfast, what you say, what you don't say, what you wear, what you don't wear. That's our Beth. She led MSU's educational ballot effort to provide voters with unbiased information about state issues, similar to her league's work. The College of Agriculture and Natural Resources Director of Government and Stakeholder Relations said, "Beth was a gift to MSU Extension. Her work left a legacy of engagement with elected officials, which I still use today." And that is a multi-page toolkit that is online that so many years later is very, very valuable to everyone. In 2004, Beth received the prestigious Staff Award, MSU Staff Award, not just Extension, for her exemplary leadership to educate Michigan staff, citizens, youth, and policy leaders at all government levels about how to be informed citizens and effective elected officials. Throughout her MSUE career, Beth was humble, very competent, knowledgeable, and wanted to educate Michiganians of all political parties to be informed voters. Though I worked with MSU administration when she joined Extension, we worked together on several initiatives, and that began a very close friendship during our Extension careers and throughout our transitions to life after one's career. I treasure her friendship over the years, and that became an extended family type of relationship. I met Richard, Beth's husband, and when I parked on the wrong side of the street when I came to visit, he always let me know. And then I met Lisa and Sarah, their daughters, and Sarah recounted that when she went to England, I think it was, Sarah, I was appointed as Sarah's contact when she was a student at MSU if she needed something. I guess I was a surrogate parent. And then they met Noel, my significant other. As the Moore family expanded, when Sarah married Scott Meese, they too became part of our family. We attended their wedding in Oregon, a beautiful wedding. And then Sarah and Scott's son, Charlie, Beth and Richard's beloved grandson, was a most welcome addition to their family. Charlie, I can't believe how tall you are. You absolutely dwarf me. I can remember Charlie as a little guy like that, visiting us at our farmhouse, and I think it was the lawnmower that you rode on, Charlie, and had such fun. When Noel and I married in 1999, Richard was the photographer for our small wedding. Beth made salads and delicious baked treats for the gathering we had for family from across the country the day after our wedding at our farmhouse. I wasn't sure that was such a good idea. Noel said, if we don't have family from Arizona and California and who knows from where at our house, they may never get to see it. So Beth pitched in, as always, and we did it. On one of their visits, my parents visited. They live in Indiana. And on one of their visits, Beth asked my mom if she would teach Beth how to make an angel food cake by scratch, one of my mom's specialties. Well, when we got to Beth's house, she didn't have a sifter. So she and my mom visited while I traipsed off somewhere to get a sifter, and the angel food cake turned out great. After retirement, several of our friends from Extension put together spa outings to Crystal Mountain for a number of years. We all enjoyed that special time with friends and former Extension colleagues. Several of that group and other Extension colleagues are here today to celebrate Beth's life and honor her. Noel and I are so fortunate to have known Beth and continue to know her family. We consider the Meese-Moore families to be our families too. We will miss you, Beth. Rest in peace.
Loving friends, let's just take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. As much as possible, I believe in being plain spoken, especially at memorial services. And that's a challenge for those of us in the faith business. We get so caught up in the mysteries of the universe, our language can sometimes become so convoluted that even we don't know what we're saying. And at times like this, when we gather to commemorate the dead, we tend to soften our words, to soften the sadness and grief that we feel. We call funerals memorial services or celebrations of life. And those terms are fine, but they do obscure a bit of the truth that these services are as much for the living as those that we've lost. The deceased have gone on to whatever comes next. It's us that are left here in sadness and in grief. So to help with that, I try to speak honestly, directly, and simply. So in that spirit, I'll be honest and say that I don't have any deep insights into Beth's life as everyone else has because I never had the chance to meet her. I wish I had. It seems like she lived a very full life, full of love and a desire for a better world in the midst of all of life's challenges. But sharing her stories is not my role in all of this. That's yours. You're gathered here out of love because Beth left some sort of imprint on all of you. I imagine it like a fingerprint pressed into a wet clay vase, where that clay is your psyche or soul. Perhaps Beth's fearlessness and advocacy has rubbed off on you or may even bent you a little bit out of shape. Maybe her love of road trips made sure that your vessel can fit into the coffee cup containers in a car. I don't know. But I do know that just as she left impressions on you, you left an imprint on her as well. We are all shaped and formed by so many people and by so many experiences. And in these times when we remember the entire life of a person, we can better see how they were also shaped and molded. This is why it's important for us to share memories and stories of Beth and how you rubbed off on one another. She's physically gone, but her impression on you will be with you until you die as well. And as we look and listen, we might also see how the impressions that she's made on us have carried down from impressions left on her from previous generations. Seeing the impressions of others on us might help us to make sense of the other guest that we're here with today, grief. Grief is a deceptively small word for all that it encompasses, just like love. And to a certain extent, both grief and love are the same thing. I've heard it said, what is grief if not love persisting? And I'd like to say that that came from the Bible or some great philosopher, but it came from a superhero TV show called WandaVision. And yet it makes the point. Grief is love continuing to exist and flow when the object of that love is no longer with us to receive that love. The pressure of that disconnected love, that grief, can feel like you're trying to hold onto a fire hose at full spray. Grief is deep and poignant. It's hard to bear, especially if you've not experienced it before. There's often a tension in it. You want to avoid it or get rid of it, and yet because it is a form of love, you also want to hold on to it, or rather the person or the thing that you're grieving. And our grief does not just confine itself to the most recent person that we've lost, but it reminds us of all the other losses and grief that we carry. In grieving one person, we also grieve everyone else. So it's normal if you think of other people in these times. And when we are grieving, it's also normal and healthy to rapidly cycle through emotions and feel multiple things at once. And I've seen it happen already. You can love someone and be angry with them, or feel hurt or have unresolved issues. Or you can be laughing over a memory and then it just transforms immediately into sadness. Losing someone often highlights all the facets and layers of love and relationships with that person and reminds us of what we can be grateful for and what we need to forgive or let go of. These are all impressions that rest on the clay of our soul. It's up to us which ones we want to keep and preserve and which ones we wish to smooth down and heal to make space for new things. So it's fitting that today's poem reminded us that we do not have to be good, that we are to tend to our soft animal bodies and share our loves and despairs. Times of death and losing loved ones remind us of this cycle of life and our connections with one another. While we grieve, the world goes on, but it keeps a space for each of us in it. And of course, grief has its own cycles and stages. You may have heard psychologists talk about stages of grief, but they're not linear like steps on a staircase. We often bounce between them. There can be shock and denial, pain and guilt, anger and bargaining, depression, loneliness, times of quiet reflection. But after a time, there's also an upward turn, and that reflection becomes reconstruction and can lead to acceptance, growth, and hope. We can be reminded that while we have been taught that death is the end of life, we do not need to be limited by the perspective of our individual lives. We are also part of the much larger and greater cycles of life, as we can see it in each of those imprints that have been left on us by others. And as we look closer, we can see the imprint of past generations in each part of us we treasure, either in ourselves or in our loved ones. Though times of grieving can be painful, They do not need to leave us in a worse place than we were before. Grief, as a part of love, reminds us that we do love and we were loved in turn. When we lose someone, we feel their loss. Yet over time, we find ways that they are still with us, that they have influenced us. Hearing some of the stories of Beth, I could imagine it's when some of you are going to vote. Not that I'm telling you to go vote or not vote, but you get my point. We can use that spraying hose of grief to water the soil of the seeds we want to sprout as we continue living, recognizing that it is also nurturing future generations not yet born. So as you remember who Beth was to you and where she helped change your life, you can see those parts of her carry on into the future. I can't know how Beth's life and love have been impressed into each one of you, but I am a fellow griever. I can remember the imprints my ancestors leave on me, like my grandmothers Doris and Mary. I treasure the keepsakes that I have of them and the gifts and the flaws they've given to me. I hope and pray that you find those truths for each of you and keep sharing those gifts and telling those stories. And as a follower of Jesus Christ who lived and loved and mourned just like you do, I want to remind you again, no matter who you are or what you are feeling, you are welcome here, today and every day, as you are embraced by a great cloud of witnesses that have been through this before you. Amen. Join me in a moment of prayer. Holy God, whose ways are not our ways and whose thoughts are not our thoughts, grant that your Holy Spirit may intercede with us with sighs too deep for human words. Heal our wounded hearts made heavy by our sorrow, and help us celebrate the life of your child Elizabeth. Help us keep her memory in our lives and in our hearts. Remind us to share the stories of how she touched our lives, inspired us, and brought us joy. God, who waits for us in heaven, assure us again that no ear has heard, nor eye seen, nor human imagination envisioned what you have prepared for those who love you. Through Jesus Christ, the one who leads us in the way to everlasting life. Amen. Because Beth's mortal remains have already been buried, we are going to, and I'm going to invite you to rise in a moment and join in the Song of Simeon, which is often prayed over the graveside. So please do so. Holy One, now let your servant go in peace. Your word has been fulfilled. My own eyes have seen the salvation which you have prepared in the light of every people, a light to reveal you to the nations and the glory of your people Israel. And all of God's people say, Amen. Let us join together, keep standing, and let us join together in singing our closing hymn, Amazing Grace, number 547.
Let's
Hear these words by Helen Keller. We bereaved are not alone. We belong to the largest company in all the world, the company of those who have known suffering. When it seems that our sorrow is too great to be borne, let us think of the great family of the heavy-hearted, into which our grief has given us entrance. And inevitably, we will feel about us their arms, their sympathy, their understanding. Believe, when you are most unhappy, that there is something for you to do in the world. So long as you can sweeten another's pain, life is not in vain. The peace of God go with you. Oh, look at you all being good. We're going to have the family depart into the fellowship hall, and you are all invited to join us for refreshments afterwards. Amen.